Let's just ask you a little question about news of day. Today, President Obama was supposed to be headed out to New Jersey and Connecticut, ended up going back to the White House. We discussed earlier on the show whether, in putting aside questions of public health, which are obviously central and should be central, on the political side, thinking about the Sandy analogy that Mark brought up, is this better for Democrats for him to be back at the White House looking like president, or is he doing more good if he was out on the campaign trail?
I think that from my vantage point, it's one of those things that you don't analyze it politically first. You look at it from the perspective of what the President of the United States has to do in situations like this. That was the same with Sandy. We never made a calculation as to whether it was good or not for him to do what a president has to do. And the same, I'm sure, is true inside the White House today. I think that the fact of the matter is there are things going on in the world, in the country today, that are unsettling for people. And for the president, from his perspective, and I obviously work for him as his pollster, I think it is the right thing to do. I think anytime you have a situation like this, whether it was around Syria and gas, whether it's around ISIS, whether it's around Ebola, you have to be president first, and that's always what is going to serve you best throughout your term in office.
Mark?
So, Joel, when they announced the races the president was going to go into before they canceled today, it was all governor's races, no Senate races. We know that if the president went to, say, Louisiana, Arkansas, some good would come of it for the Democratic candidate. What are the bad things that would happen? If the president went to Louisiana, in what ways would that set Mary Landrieu's chances of winning back?
Yeah, I don't think that's necessarily the right question, Mark, with all due respect, since that's the name of the show. I didn't plan that, by the way. Look, I think that when you look at the map that we started with here, we start with, if you look at the 10 toss-up states, 6 of those states were won by Mitt Romney by an average of 15 points or more. Several of them he won by 20 points or more. I think the map right from the start, everybody's focused right now on where we are 2 weeks out and where's the president going. At the beginning of this cycle, everybody was talking about what a tough uphill climb this was for
Joel,
Democrats.
I get that. I'm just asking mechanically. Like, if you did a poll in Arkansas today and then the president went and you did a poll in a few days, what impact would he have on the state and on the race if he went? That would be so negative that he's not going.
I don't think it's a question of whether it's negative or not. I think in most of these places it's probably already baked in the cake. So I think it's not a big decision for any candidate. I think the truth in all of these races, by the way, and I think you've heard me say this probably before, candidates and campaigns matter. These folks all have to win on their own. There are some folks in states that Romney won by significant margins, and Democrats are doing well there. In some other states, it's a tough climb to overcome. So I think that the question here is not whether it's going to do significant damage or significant help. I think the question here is it going to have any impact? And if candidates think they're better off running their own campaign and presenting their case to the voters, that's their choice. And it's probably the right one for most of them. I think people ultimately vote for the candidate that's in front of them, not the candidate that's remote and somewhere distant at the time.
All right, Joel, I'm going to ask you, you're a pollster. I'm sure you don't get polled very often, but we're going to give you a little three.
I hang up on it.
A little three question. Of course you do, because you're a sensible man. We're going to give you a little 3-question poll here, okay?
Oh, good.
Number 1, is the country on the right track or the wrong track?
I think the country's on the right track.
Country's on the right track. Okay. Yeah. Second question, you're a Yankees fan.
Oh, yeah.
Greatest Yankee of all time, Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, or Derek Jeter?
I think
if you say Derek Jeter, we're going to kick you off the set.
No. First of all, look, I was there the night the Yankees won that game and Jeter got the game-winning hit. I think Derek Jeter, in a remarkable way, probably most closely approximates Lou Gehrig in terms of embodying the Yankee ethic and the Yankee ethos. I think you've left off some other players from that list, like Yogi Berra. Okay. In terms of absolute...
Who's the greatest Yankee of all time, Joel Benenson?
Joel, just answer the question, for God's sakes. And again, if you say Derek Jeter, I'm going to send Keith Oldman to your house with a baseball bat.
If I had to pick one of them, I'd probably pick Babe Ruth.
Okay, that's a very good answer. All right, third question. All right, if you had to have a choice between these 3 people for President of the United States, and you know all 3 of them, who would you choose? Mario Cuomo and his prime, Andrew Cuomo right now, or Chris Cuomo?
This is such a Cuomo family game. Chris Cuomo.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Chris Cuomo for president. Okay.
Hey, Joel, the Washington Post poll that's out today suggests the Democratic brand isn't doing that great.
Yeah.
There's been other polling that shows when the president took office, Democrats had big edge on who do you trust on the economy, who do you trust on national security. I assume you accept the premise that the Democratic brand's not in the same shape it was. Why has that happened over the course of the time the president's been in office?
Well, I think it's happened largely because of Congress. People today, voters today, view Washington writ large as the most dysfunctional they've ever seen it. That has kept the Republican numbers depressed for a very long period of time. Numbers on the Democratic Party and Democrats in Congress have come down a bit. Both of them have approval ratings in the 30s right now. And I think that has to do with the macro sense that that place isn't working.
But why are Republicans seen as better on foreign policy now, say?
I don't know. You referred to numbers back from the beginning of the president's term when he was inaugurated. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, early on in his presidency, certainly after he got Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, well,
even into 2012.
Yeah,
when he was running for
I mean, I think right now there's a lot going on in the world that's uncertain, and I think it's just a matter of the party that's in power is, getting rated more harshly on that because you're the party in power. There are forces out there that people hadn't heard of. 6 months ago, Americans didn't know what Ebola was. They didn't know what ISIS was. They're now hearing about those things on the news every day, and that creates a sense of uncertainty.
Joel, let me ask you, only time for one more question. You've been pretty outspoken writing about Hillary Clinton and about the disfavor or the unfavor that some of her supporters had been doing earlier in the year, speculating about her running and how that wasn't doing her any favors, right? She's now out on the campaign trail. If you were advising her now, what would you say she should be doing between now and Election Day to set herself up for a presidential run? What are the metrics?
Well, I don't think I wrote anything about her. I may have commented. Look, I think the truth for Secretary Clinton is the same advice I give most clients. Number one is be authentic. Be who you are. Figure out that early in your efforts and live with that from beginning to end. The other thing I would say is recognize that if you were running, and I'm still not 100% certain she is, but let's just say that if you're running, you've got to understand that you're going to be running in 2016, not the 1990s. The era of Bill Clinton's campaigns is very different than the era it is today. That means you've got to let a lot of stuff roll off your back. You can't react to everything. The notion in those days was you respond to any attack. If you do that today, sometimes you give meaningless attacks more air than you intend to, and you shouldn't do that.